it takes the pressure off of being perfect, of looking good, right? Of impressing others, and it just allows you to focus on the actual thing, which is really what matters and what leads to growth.
Welcome to the Next Level Income Show, where it's our goal to take your income, your investments, and your life to the next level. I'm your host, Chris Larson. If you haven't yet, get a copy of our book for free at our website, nextlevelincome.com. That's www.nextlevelincome.com. Just click on the book link, and I'll even send you a copy if you put your address in. On today's show, we have Gavin McHale. As a former hockey player and kinesiology graduate, he followed all the rules. But when Gavin started his personal training business in 2012, he had big aspirations, just like he had in his hockey career. After years of building a mediocre business, he realized that he was the one holding himself back from the success he knew he was destined for. Over the course of several years and lots of work on himself, Gavin was able to build a more sustainable and higher paying business and started to see the success come to fruition. Gavin has since left the gym and gone all in on helping other amazing human beings become the best version of themselves, both through business by unlocking their potential and helping them build a more resilient mindset. Today, he works with my coach, Craig Ballantyne, and today we are going to talk about your money mindset and how to use your mindset, abundance mentality, the growth mindset, all to help you take more action and further your journey towards financial independence. Gavin, great to see you again. Welcome to the show.
Man, it's great to see you. Unfortunate it wasn't, shaking hands and breaking bread, but it's great to see you on here as well.
Yeah, I missed you. I missed you when our mastermind got together here down in Mexico this time, but we're gonna talk a little about last time we got together down there and how that kind of led to this conversation here today that we're going to share with the audience. But you have a great background, Gavin, as an elite athlete, and that's really going to lead into some of the things that we're going to talk about today. Would you share a bit about that with the audience before we get into it?
Absolutely, yeah. I'll try and keep it as short as possible, but I spent my entire I'm Canadian, so what would you expect? I spent my childhood playing hockey. Even though both my parents were British and didn't really know what it was all about.
Oh, really? How about that?
Yeah. My dad was a soccer player and my mom, she grew up over here, but they were really poor, so there was no hockey,
Yeah.
They thought, they didn't put me in hockey because they thought there was hitting when you were like 5. They didn't know any of this stuff. But, luckily, I obviously being in Canada, you got friends who were playing and got into the game. And just to kind of start opening this loop here, I decided to play goalie after about a year because I wasn't very good as a player. And I was really good at it naturally. And so this is a pattern for me that I would gravitate to these things that I was really good at naturally. Worked my way up the ranks quite quickly and got to junior hockey, which is, 2, maybe 3 steps away from professional hockey. And that's when everything started to get harder, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
When you take the best players from each place and you put them all together, right? I was a big fish in a small pond when I was in my hometown. And then it's, you start realizing, oh, everybody's this good. And that's when you need to start separating yourself in other ways. And also the first time that I think a lot of people in my position start to face failure and deal with failure. And I didn't deal with it very well. In fact, I didn't deal with it at all until it dealt with me and it said, we're gonna take this into our own hands. The universe decided to take it into its own hands and kind of tell me, hey, if you can't get this figured out, then your career is over. And that's what happened. I was so close, and yet, as so close yet so far away. So it was a wild ride, and it's one that I still am grateful for. And it taught me a lot in hindsight. Unfortunately, not in the moment, but that's the long and short of it.
Yeah, it's interesting how that works. And you mentioned a few things there, Gavin. I really admire. I was a catcher when I played baseball, and then I moved over to cycling, which you don't really have like a goalie or a catcher or somebody that's kind of like the de facto, kind of like team captain, if you will. But I've always seen the goalie. As we were talking about, my boys play lacrosse. It's kind of the same thing. It's like the quarterback or the catcher, in some of these other sports. But the thing that really impresses me about a goalie, and I saw this with my older son when he was playing in soccer. He has the ability to do this. He can kind of flip the page after a bad play. And
Mhm.
did you find you had that ability? Like, if you got scored on, did you have the ability to kind of compartmentalize, if you will, and turn that page and say, okay, next play, let's do this and get the team fired back up?
Sporadically,
Yeah.
yes. So,
Yeah.
unfortunately, like I would actually say that that was the thing that really held me back
Yeah.
was,
Hmm.
and we can dive into the mindset lessons now. Is
Yeah.
uh, if we go right back to Carol Dweck's book called Mindset,
Love
right,
it.
and
I've
talk about
quoted often. Yeah.
it, right. These
Yeah.
people are well versed in that, your
Yeah.
listeners. So we have the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. And I was very much in the fixed mindset, probably as deep as you can be, that I was on stage and everybody was watching me, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when I quote unquote failed, right? I let in a goal. To me, that wasn't just a goal, right? To me, this meant I'm not good enough. I'm not a good
Mm,
enough human being, right? No one's going to like me because I was playing because people like me and trying to get my parents' approval and coaches' approval and all this
yeah.
stuff. Right? So
Yeah.
I piled all this pressure onto myself. And, every time that I make a mistake, there's that story again, right? Failure means I'm not good enough. And
Hmm.
so for me, it was like, not only it's hard enough to compartmentalize and turn the page, but I was like having to turn 50 pages because I was putting so much other crap on top of it,
It
right?
wasn't just the goal, like you said. It was all this other stuff. They would come crashing in every time that happened.
It was
Yeah.
what it was made the goal
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
right? And if we just look at logic, if I had been able to be successful, the only way would have been as if I stopped every single puck perfectly, right? Because like that's
Yeah.
what a fixed mindset does. So what I wish I would have done, and in hindsight, the shift here that hopefully will help your listeners is, the shift from failure means I'm not good enough to failure is feedback, right?
Failure is
And
feedback. I love that. I'm going to write these quotes down here. That's a great one. So if you're
right,
listening, remember that failure is feedback. And by the way, Gavin's full of these.
I'm just locked and loaded with these quotes. So failure is feedback, right? If we look at the decision making loop, the decision making cycle, it's an event happens. So I have a goal. We apply a belief, right? So my belief at the time was failure means I'm not good enough, but ideally we're going to shift that to failure equals feedback.
Mhm.
And that belief makes you feel an emotion. And then we all know people make decisions based on emotion, right? So that new failure is feedback. Instead of me feeling angry or frustrated or unworthy or basically like a piece of crap,
Yeah.
it would have helped me feel curious, to ask questions. I would say, hey, can I get some more help with the video? Can I hire somebody that would help me? And then that's going to lead to different actions. And as Craig about the virtuous cycle, right? Our mutual friend Craig talks about the virtuous cycle of behavior. That's
Yeah.
where that comes from, is come from a place of curiosity or a better emotional
Yeah.
state.
No, and I love that. And I want to back up because I have talked about it a lot. I've talked about Mindset by Carol Dweck. Another book I like to quote a lot is Grit by Michelle Duckworth. And those two kind of like blend together in my mind. I talk about David versus Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell. And all of these things I read as I was going from individual contributor, like a sales rep, to a leader role in my career. And it was really neat because it was like these things that you and I learned, Gavin, as an individual competitor, contributor. Then you have to say, like, as you do now as a coach, as I did in that leadership role, how do you translate these learnings? How do you do this? And now I think about it a lot, even though that was at least 10 years ago when I was going through that journey. Now I have children and I'm trying to teach them these lessons, which, being athletes, I think it's a phenomenal environment to do that. But let's walk it back. So if you could explain the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset for listeners, what is the difference?
Yeah, the best analogy is the fixed mindset is you're on stage and you're performing, right? Please love me. Please give me external validation. Me doing this thing means I'm good enough, right? So for me, it was hockey. The growth mindset is one where you're in the box, right? And you're making a sandcastle. And if it doesn't work, you knock it down and you try again. And essentially, you're playing the game,
Love that.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what this allows, the growth mindset is it takes the pressure off,
Yeah.
right? It takes the pressure off of being perfect, of looking good, right? Of impressing others, and it just allows you to focus on the actual thing, which is really what matters and what leads to growth.
I love that. It's the whole fail forward mindset. And there are ways that you can make this more comfortable for yourself. And as I look back, and you probably would echo this, what's interesting is I think the failures we accumulate early in life ultimately make life easier and make success more achievable later in life. And it's hard to realize that. It's hard to realize that when you're in the moment, when you're young, when you're immature. One of the things that we do is we talk about, this at the dinner table with the boys. We talk about it with my wife and I. It's like, hey, what was a success? What was a failure? What could you have done differently? And with the sales reps I used to work with, something would go wrong, and I would say, okay, Gavin, what happened? Oh, this happened. And let's say it was 100% out of your control. Maybe an instrument didn't get delivered, or it wasn't sterilized properly, or even something kind of out in left field where the surgeon got upset and actually like threw the instrument on the floor in frustration. And now you were looked at and said, hey, Gavin, give me another instrument. And it's like, well, I didn't do anything wrong. I say, well, hey, what could you have done differently? What could you have done to change that scenario? And I think when you have this filter, these questions that we can ask ourselves, what happens is it changes. Instead of saying, hey, I can't do anything, to, hey, what could I have done? You start to think and solve problems, and it literally changes the wiring in your brain, in my opinion.
Yeah, we start to allow our brain to do what it was meant to do, solve
Yeah.
problems, right?
Yeah.
The problem with the way most of I like to think of probably all your listeners, me and you, high level executives, athletes, we think like high performers, right? I would call myself a high performer, and the plight of
Absolutely.
the high performer is we're so hard on ourselves
Yeah.
that
It's a
we
blessing. It's a double-edged sword. Yeah.
it's such a double-edged sword because it pushes us, it drives us, but at the same time, right, we spend so much time judging ourselves or judging whatever it is that we don't actually find the lesson in the mistake, or not even the mistake, or in the event, in the thing that happened, right? And so we are so busy being so mad at ourselves that we can't even look for the fact that, like you said, oh, maybe this thing wasn't delivered, on time. Well, maybe what you could learn is we gotta create a system to make sure that what's ordered gets delivered. And you're so busy being mad at yourself that you forget to tell somebody, hey, we need to create a system for this, right?
Yeah.
Or we need to
Absolutely.
teach
Yeah.
surgeons how to use these
Yeah.
instruments
Or have a
properly.
backup, or yeah,
Right.
just something that develops that. Which, and I love what you said. We're curious. We're curious as humans. Like, it's wired into us. We seek. We seek food. We try to find better things to do. We fly into space. We go into the ocean. We do all these things. I believe, like what you said, we're meant to do this. But I think the fixed versus growth mindset. It also dwells, in my opinion, in the scarcity versus abundance. So, fixed mindset is like scarcity, is like the scarcity mindset, and growth mindset is like the abundance mindset. And I'm, just like you're on this podcast, I'm on other podcasts just as much as I do my own podcast, Gavin. And I'm often asked, like, what's the number one thing you look for? Like, what's the number one thing that people can do, when they're looking for a partner, or, somebody that they can work with? And I say the number one thing is make sure you surround yourself with people with an abundance mindset. Because if you believe that the pie is fixed and it can't grow, it's the same thing. You're looking internally, you're looking small. You're not saying, well, hey, how can we all work together? How can we grow this? And there can be more for other people. And really that, that's going to, fall naturally into the next area, that we're talking about when it comes to like, how do you grow wealth?
Yeah. Like, so the scarcity mindset, like, totally cuts you off from so much potential good, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you're
It's poison, it's
essentially
cancer. Yeah.
right. And you're essentially putting yourself in a box that,
Yeah.
whatever, because of this external circumstance, I can't do this. Right.
Yeah.
And just the salesperson saying, well, there's nothing I can do, but what can you do? What
Yeah.
can you do?
Yeah.
Can you shift that into, I'm not saying it's your fault, but can you take radical responsibility? Because when you take radical responsibility, you take back ownership of the situation.
Love that. Yeah.
The abundance mindset allows you to take ownership of any situation, go, it is directly on me. I want to have this success. And the failures and the successes are all me. So if I want to accept the successes, then I have to be willing to accept the failures too. And that's just
Great.
what
Yeah.
the abundance mindset is.
Yeah.
I can change my circumstance.
Yeah.
Right.
I love that. And look, it goes both ways. So if you beat yourself up when something doesn't go well, celebrate when something does go well. Celebrate that. And I think Shaquille O'Neal spoke at our event a little over a year ago, and he said he would celebrate and then he would put the trophy in the closet. That's what he learned something from his father. And it's like, don't ever get too caught up in your own success, which I think is interesting. But when we talk about, how to create wealth, which we talk about a lot on this show, I tell my boys, again, kind of going back to, if I can explain it to my kids, my, now 11 and 13-year-olds, then it should make sense to pretty much everybody. Right. Cause they're hard to explain stuff to sometimes, but they're like, well, Dad, how do you make money? I said, I use the old Zig Ziglar, if you can help other people get what they want, then you'll have everything you ever need. Help find ways to help people get things. And that's kind of the abundance mindset. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on, Gavin, is last time we spent time together at the mastermind in Mexico, Craig Ballantyne, who's my coach. I've been working with him for several years. I've been following him for over a decade. He's fantastic. We're going to share some resources that you can get from Gavin and Craig and their team here before the end of the podcast. But Craig had you come up and he had you walk the whole room through a visualization. And you've actually put together, Gavin, a millionaire money mindset visualization. Would you please share like how you came up with that, why you did it? And, we're going to share with the audience how they can get it, but, share kind of like what is that all about? What's the goal of utilizing that? Today's show is sponsored by Money Insights and their investment optimizer strategy. In my book, I share how I use this same strategy starting over a decade ago to invest my money in two places at one time. This strategy has been used by the wealthiest for generations for estate planning, minimizing taxes, preserving wealth, and increasing stability for their investments. Now you can do the same thing. In addition, you can build a plan to build an emergency fund, pay for college, fund a business, plan for retirement, and ultimately optimize your total financial picture. To find out more information, check us out at the banking link at nextlevelincome.com.
Yeah. So before everybody clicks off, because it's the woo-woo time now.
Woo-woo, yeah. Hey, I live in Asheville, man. If you're in I live in Asheville. Like, this is a lot of spirituality here. So come on,
right.
Stay with us for a few more minutes.
Just stay with us as we vibe here. Let me also say one thing. If you're listening to this podcast, it's because you respect Chris and Chris's message. When I got up to speak, I guess a year ago now, in 2022, the first time I'd ever spoken to a group, there's these people like Chris in the audience, right? And I'm like, these guys are gonna, the imposter syndrome in me, these guys are gonna laugh me off the stage. This is woo-woo. And as I'm going through, I can see people, Chris, literally leaning in and nodding and then, asking questions and jumping in. And it's like, you can choose to like all this woo-woo nonsense, or you can choose to just buy in. And like, I'll say this, give it a week. If it's no good, then you can email Chris, you can email me, and you can tell us that we're full of crap. Give it a week.
Or you
Okay.
could just unsubscribe and not listen
Yeah.
anymore. It'd be just
Yeah. Perfect. Perfect. That's easier for us. So basically, our brains cannot distinguish between something that is quote unquote real, like, me and you talking, and something that is vividly imagined. Right. So if I were, and Michael Jordan talked about this in his career, he's
yeah.
that foul shot that I made, or that jump shot that I made to win the championship,
Yeah.
I did that 1,000 times in my head.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
he has actually done the rep 1,000 times.
Yeah.
It's not his first rep, it's his 1,001st.
Yeah.
And so why do we not use this to get what we want? Like it,
Yeah.
when we realize what the brain does and how
Yeah.
we can literally sit in our house. I'm up in Canada, you're in North Carolina. We can sit there and we can just close our eyes and visualize something and give it a better opportunity to come into our lives. Now, I want to be clear. Manifestation is not just sitting in your office thinking about it. You also have to take action steps towards it, but you're going to give yourself a better chance by visualizing it as well, because that brain again can start to solve the problems.
Absolutely.
So what we did here was, and speaking of abundance mindset, this is all about abundance, was we took, there's this part of your brain, I'm sure you've talked about it before, called the reticular activating system. And it literally tells your conscious brain what to focus on, right? So you're looking for a new car, you see that car everywhere, right? We got investors here, you see for sale. I've invested in a couple of properties. I'm a slightly new investor. I see every for sale sign I see, I'm Googling the house.
Yeah.
Like it's a curse, right? Because my reticular activating system is like, that could be
It's
an
on it.
opportunity.
Yeah.
It's on it, right? Now the problem is, if you have beliefs, deep unconscious beliefs, let's say about money, like how many of us grew up with he doesn't grow on trees and it's hard to make money, right?
Or it's in the Bible. People say, hey, it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than a rich man to enter into heaven. Right. Like we see it all over the place. It's in politics, right? Oh, the rich aren't paying their fair share. Well, who's rich? Who's not? It's everywhere, and it's insidious, and it's hard to even realize it sometimes.
Yeah. And so it's so hard once that's ingrained, right?
Yeah.
You can consciously say, I want to be wealthy. I want to be wealthy. I want all this. I want to provide for my family. But when your subconscious is going, yeah, but money doesn't grow on trees. And
or
rich
you don't
people
deserve it, or
don't
rich people are
deserve it.
evil, or
Yeah,
you're
whatever.
stealing from somebody if you have, it's
Yeah,
gone.
look at all the poor people who can't eat, and you're trying to make an extra buck, like all this stuff, right? So your reticular activating system is then actively going to look for examples and evidence that that is true,
Yep.
which
Yeah.
furthers the spiral down, right,
Yeah.
into the vicious cycle that is not serving us. So we need to rewire. So what we've done with the money mindset visualization is we're rewiring your brain into abundance. The visualization that I give, you're at a beach, you're looking at the ocean. The beautiful part about oceans is they go on and on forever, or you can't see the land on the horizon. And you think of that like, what if that was money? What if you dunked your cup in the ocean and it was just money? And like, if you can vividly imagine that, well, then your brain starts to go, money everywhere. Money never runs out. Money flows everywhere. And now we start looking for evidence of that being true. And guess what? We look for evidence, we find evidence.
That's right. Yeah,
That's the
absolutely.
beauty of our brains.
Yeah, no, it's true. I've seen it. And this is why I think this is a great fit, Gavin. I first learned about visualizations and meditation through sports performance. So I read a
Yeah.
book, learned about the meditation when I was about 18 years old. I remember actually specifically where I was, and I was reading about it. And we all do this, right? You're like, oh, you close your eyes and you picture yourself, catching or making the winning touchdown play, right? On the bike, right? You picture yourself at the top of a climb or going across the line. You raise your hands. It's right. You win it. You picture yourself winning the championship, the Stanley Cup, whatever it is, and you go through those moments. Michael Phelps said it when the water got into his goggles during the Olympics. He said he had gone through in his head so many times swimming down the pool that he knew exactly how many strokes that it would take, and he knew exactly when he was going to hit that wall because he had done it in his mind, and his mind didn't differentiate between that event where he couldn't see out of his eyes. It's we see it, we hear it, and it's amazing. We see it with athletes. So why not with money? Why not with business? Why not with other things in the world? It really is impressive. But I do want to underscore something you said. So a lot of people, when The Secret came out, maybe 15 or so years ago, 15, 20 years ago, I read it, listened to it. I was like, this is great. But if you sit around and as Craig says, what does he say? Motivation beats meditation. Is that what he says? Movement beats meditation. I
Yeah.
forget what his
Yeah. And
quote
action
is.
beats anxiety. Yeah.
Yeah. Like at some point, you got to get moving, right? You got to do that. And Tony Robbins says it, take massive action. Once you have a plan, once you know what's going on, once your mind is in the right place, then you got to take massive action. So what Gavin is telling you, if you're listening today, is that, hey, if you need to get your mind in the right place, do that. Spend some time, listen to a motivation once a day for 10 minutes in the evening or in the morning or on your on your workout or your commute, but then start to take the massive action to get you where you want to be.
Yeah. And I think to further that a little bit is the scarcity mindset and the judgment and all these things that we've talked about that aren't serving high performers.
Yeah.
The biggest problem is that it's paralyzing people from taking action.
Absolutely.
Right. If you just if you were in an abundant place and you just took some action, somewhat in the direction of what you want.
Yeah.
Let's say you want to become an investor. Well, if you just took one action to go listen to this podcast and then took one action from the podcast, right? Well, then you'd be way further ahead because not only would you probably have taken good action if you're listening to this, but even if that action didn't work at all, well, then you've removed that from the possibilities and you can take a different action. You've learned from that, right? So taking action, just like failure, provides us with feedback, and then we calibrate and recalibrate as we need to. But the only thing that's not going to serve you is not taking action towards what you say you want.
I love that. So, I love to tell, listeners, to talk to our coaching clients, you gather information, you put a plan together, and then you take action with accountability. Can you, Gavin, share a little bit about what you do with Craig and your coaching programs and how you help people, get in the right mindset, begin to take action, but then, as an engineer, I like to say iterate, make changes, have accountability so that you do this. And that's why I started working with Craig, because I said, hey, I want to get to the next level of where I was going at the time. And I wanted somebody that could hold me accountable and also give me that external perspective to determine, hey, do I need different resources, and am I going in the right direction? How do you guys do that?
Yeah, so I think that you hit on something there with the different perspective and the external perspective. So I always say to people, you can't read the label inside the bottle, right?
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
You're in the bottle, you're in the eye of the hurricane, right?
Yeah.
This thing happens, that's just an objective event happens. And because of all the emotional connection and all the attachment you have to it, you start weaving these stories and writing this drama, right? I said we're like the best drama fiction writers in the world when we're in a tough spot, right? So what a coach does, and the biggest thing that we do, Craig has taught me this just through osmosis, is we're the objective observer that also has a, we want you to succeed, but we're totally objective, right? Even someone on your team who wants you to succeed, I mean, they're going to get paid more if you succeed. So like they're kind of biased, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus like, we don't care. We'll tell you what you need to hear. Right. And at the same time, what I love about what Craig's created, and he's allowed me to expedite this, is we see so many reps, like we see so many people that like our clients come through and we're working with them, we're talking to them, and then we're working with so many clients
Yeah.
in our ecosystem that we get so much feedback so fast on the problems that people are having so that we can create systems that are going to help these people, right? And a
Yeah.
lot, as you know, Chris, you step in that room, a lot of those people, they're your people, right?
Yeah.
These are the
Yeah.
people that like, they're just like us. We literally, we wake up at whatever time, you go to the gym and you're talking about this stuff until you go to sleep at night when you're at these live events, because we just want to talk about it. There's nothing else to talk about. We just go, go, go. But I think the biggest thing is we're going to be the objective observer. We're going to set a plan in place for you, with you, and then we're going to hold you ruthlessly accountable to it, because it's literally my job to do that. Like if you
Yeah.
don't succeed at what we've set out together, I have failed, right? So I think that's the huge value of coaching, just in general. And like, you can work to become more objective yourself. You look at someone like Alex Hormozy, he's literally done work to, someone said he's like logic in human form, right? Like he's so objective, but he's worked on that.
Right.
And
Yeah.
he's learned that from coaches and from mentors.
Yeah.
And I think that, if you want to expedite that, hire a coach or bring someone who's going to be objective for you.
I love that. And speaking of coaches, I can't help but notice Ted Lasso over your shoulder there, Gavin, and the
Well,
Believe. And look, if you haven't watched that series, I think it's fantastic. Why do you have that picture of Ted Lasso and Believe up there?
so I covered it with my 1 out of 10 hat. Shout out to Craig Valentine. But the line underneath Ted Lasso there on the photo is "Be curious, not judgmental." It's a Walt Whitman quote. And my entire life, I was very judgmental of others, but mostly I was very judgmental of myself. And so that shift from, oh, why can't I suck, I can't do this, to how can I,
Yeah.
has been monumental for me. On the other side, the Believe, a
Yeah.
client actually got this for me. I truly think that the biggest thing holding so many people back, and it's held me back in the past, is just a lack of self-belief. And this, like, we have all these tools and we have all these amazing strategies within us. Like, we know it. We have everything we need within us.
Yeah.
But we don't believe in our ability to implement, do it.
Yeah.
And the separator between super, super successful and successful but not as successful is that belief. So it's just a good reminder to my clients to always believe.
I love that. I love that. I think we're going to end on that. Gavin, if people want to learn more about how they can work with you, how they can get actually the money mindset visualization, and also next month, so this is early December that this podcast is coming out. Next month, you all are hosting a live mastermind event. And if you want to join myself, if you want to join Gavin, if you want to join Craig in beautiful, warm Cancun, Mexico, maybe you can share a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, Mexico in January is an easy sell for anybody north of, middle of the States. Yeah, so easiest way is on Instagram. As of right now, it's at Gavin McHale 1. I'm working on changing it, so it'll probably be at Real Gavin McHale, going with the Craig
And
Valentine.
I'll put the link in the show notes here too. But yeah,
drop that in. Also, I just say to a lot of people, if you're not on Instagram, or if it's not a way you like to communicate, because I know it's still weird for some people, kind of me too. Just email me, gavin@craigballantyne.com. You can learn more about us too at craigballantyne.com or earlytorise.com. A few things on there. there's just a few nuggets of information there. But I just encourage you, you can go and you can watch websites and all that stuff, watch the videos. Just send me a message and let's actually talk about it, because that's what action takers do.
I love that. We'll have the link for the visualization as well in the show notes. And then if you want to get yeah, there you go. It's all good, man. And then if you want a free copy of Craig's book, email coach@nextlevelincome.com, coach@nextlevelincome.com, write free, just put Craig's free book and your address in the body of the email. Send that to coach@nextlevelincome.com and we'll send you a free copy on behalf of Gavin and Craig. Gavin, thank you so much for joining us today, sharing your insights, your history, and how people can use all these things to help them on their journey towards financial independence.
Like I said, it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much, Chris.
Hey, Chris here again. I hope you found this episode valuable. Now, I have one more thing to gift you. We have a page for my coaching clients where you can get a free copy of my book, as well as much more from previous guests on the show. Just check out nextlevelincome.com/coaching to get a free copy of my book, audiobook, and much more. I'll send you a copy of my book and cover all the shipping costs as a thank you for listening to the podcast. Also, please like, share, and take just 90 seconds to give us a rating on Apple Podcasts.